A midsummer's day in Shakespeare country in the heart of England.
When Gerry travelled down the motorway, he was that person and he was that opportunity.
On a major motorway, two bitter rivals collide.
That rivalry is born out of basic, pure hatred for one another.
An execution-style killing in the fast lane.
For what? His life, this beautiful man's life, was taken for a patch of clothing.
What were the tragic events that led to the murder of a Hell's Angel? August the 12th, 2007, and the M40 motorway, the main route between Britain's two largest cities, London and Birmingham, is heavy with traffic.
All of a sudden, red brake lights, anchors on, come to a rather quick and unexpected stop.
With nothing moving, it soon became clear this was no normal traffic jam, and major tailbacks soon began to build up.
People were occupying their time by taking their dogs for walks or taking their toddlers into a field for a pee break. People were chatting, people turned up the radio. A lot of people were just kicking back, reclining in their seats and just relaxing. And then there was a small group of us that were just keeping an eye out and an ear out for what was going on ahead.
We're just driving south on the M40 motorway. We're just coming up to the Warwick service station. There's a motorcyclist laying flat out in the middle of the fast lane. Somebody needs to get here pretty bloody quickly.
This was the first the police knew that a man had been shot on the motorway.
We realised that there was likely to have been a fatality when the radio report said that there'd been a death due to a car accident. And then also the amount of emergency vehicles going down the hard shoulder, one of which was a doctor's car.
When police arrived minutes later, they found a biker dead on the road. This was no road traffic accident, though. Obvious bullet wounds revealed it was an assassination.
The body found lying here on the fast lane of the M40 was that of a Hell's Angel, Gerry Tobin. But why was he killed, and why such a public execution on a road packed with families and holidaymakers? With unprecedented access to the police investigation and to the family of Gerry Tobin, we've pieced together the crucial events leading up to the murder, the death of an angel.
The murder of a Hell's Angel put a huge pressure on the police to solve the case quickly. With so many aggrieved fellow angels, they had to show they could be trusted to bring the killer to justice.
The only people who really witnessed the shooting itself were Gerry's riding companions. They gave us initially some accounts, but very shortly after, probably within half an hour or so, they then refused to speak to us.
As word of the execution spread, from the angels came a wall of silence. This secrecy would complicate the task of identifying the body. The police needed a name, but no one would come forward.
It's the only case I think I've ever been involved in where I have confirmed publicly to the media the identity of a murder victim without having had a formal identification. That's because I was satisfied that we had identified him by other means, and I was clearly satisfied and convinced of his identity.
Gerry Tobin was identified by his belongings. His wallet and personal effects gave the police his name.
A key part for me is to establish a motive, and that need, to assist with that, you need to understand Gerry and Gerry's life and whether he had enemies, etc.
Real Crimes has uncovered unseen archive footage of Gerry from the Bulldog bash in 2006. This gives us the briefest of snapshots of Gerry's secretive life in the Angels. Even his mother was totally unaware that he was a member. What information we do know is provided by an undercover officer who has investigated this organisation and other motorcycle clubs.
Everything I know about Gerard Tobin tells me that he was a decent guy, that he loved motorbikes, and to that end he was a very proficient and skilled mechanic. And I'm sure that part of the reason he was taken up and become a member of the Hells Angels was that skill that he brought to them of being able to work on motorcycles and work on the club motorcycles.
When murdered, Tobin had been riding home after one of the biggest events in the Hells Angels calendar, the Bulldog Bash. A 3-day jamboree held near Stratford-upon-Avon with burnouts, drag racing and rock music. It is a meet that attracts thousands of bike enthusiasts. It is also an unmissable event for Hells Angels, the one time in the year where members of this secretive organisation all come together in one place. Canadian author and journalist Julian Scher has written extensively about clubs such as the Hells Angels and other motorcycle organisations, mainly in the USA and Canada. He expresses his views on their activities.
On the one hand, they have a brand that tends to symbolize we're just lovable rascals, we're rebels, that Hollywood easy rider type of look, where it's sort of have fun, you're riding on the Harley, you're anti-establishment. They organize charity runs. I mean, for goodness sake, the Hells Angels rode in the Queen's Jubilee in 2002. And that gives them an entree. That gives them an air of legitimacy and danger. And yet, the other part of their message with the death head, with the patch, is we are the Hells Angels. Don't mess with us. We will beat the crap out of you. It's called the death head, you know. It's not called the we're just going to tap you on the noggin head.
The Hells Angels were formed in America in the 1950s. It wasn't until 1969 that they arrived on these shores, and today police estimate there are 250 fully patched members in the UK and about 100 probationers. But they are only one of the outlaw biker groups operating in the UK today. Others include the Devil's Disciples, the Barbarians and the Patriots. In all, there are believed to be around 25 active clubs with as many as 1,500 members, the biggest of which are the Outlaws with around 430 members, bitter rivals to the Angels.
The Hells Angels and other outlaw gangs will often wear a 1% badge or a tattoo or a patch. And the 1% comes from the birth of the biker gangs in the late 1940s in America, when bikers rolled into a small town in California and trashed it. Legitimate motorcyclists said 99% of us are peace-loving, law-abiding motorcyclists. And the outlaw biker said, we're the 1%. When I've talked to Hells Angels leaders, on the one hand they'll say we're not criminals, but on the other hand they say we respect only our own laws and we will settle our own legal matters.
And Gerry Tobin was proud to be a 1%er with the Hells Angels. As the hedonistic Bulldog Bash came to an end, he joined hundreds of other bikers making their way home among the Sunday drivers and holiday traffic.
They left the Bulldog Bash, I think, at around 1:45 or 1:50 on the afternoon of Sunday the 12th of August and travelled north.
Gerry rode as the lead of the 3-bike convoy. He was followed by 2 probationers. This was a strict part of the Hells Angel code. The probationers have to show respect for the fully patched member.
There they are, there they are, they're there.
Gerry's patches that he wore with such pride were to turn him into an obvious target. After a weekend at the Hells Angels Bulldog Bash Festival, Gerry Tobin is heading for home. He's caught on CCTV filling up at a petrol station. 20 minutes later, he'd become part of a sickening scene, murdered in broad daylight.
Having fueled his motorcycle at these pumps, he walked across and there was a camera on the corner of the building over there, the shop building. And for some reason which was never explained and we'll never know, is he glanced up and he looked at the camera and smiled up at the camera before going into pay and then leaving and then heading off to the motorway.
At about 2:10, Gerry Tobin passed a green Rover in a lay-by on the A40.
And as the bikes came down here and passed, the green Rover would have recognised the patches on Gerry's back and the fact that he was a Hells Angel and pulled very quickly at great speed off of this lay-by. So much so that another witness driving down had to swerve to avoid the car coming off.
M40. If they're going on the M40, follow them on the M40.
The three motorcycles, apparently unaware of this, carried on down this road towards the M40, followed then by the green Rover.
I was joining the M40 off of the A46, and in the particular lanes as you approach the main junction, I was actually undertaken by a green Rover 600 with a number of occupants. And I actually noted it at the time because I thought that it was a particularly clean example. So I made a mental note of that particular vehicle, and it wasn't until later that the press asked for information on this 600 Rover.
At 2:17, Gerry Tobin enters the M40, being followed by the green Rover.
Well, this is the overbridge over junction 13. So this is the last junction that Gerry would have travelled past before he was shot. He would have travelled from the north, which is the direction over there. He would have travelled south on that carriageway, under this bridge. So from this point on, Gerry was probably 1 minute away from being shot.
We're going to do this. Let's do this. Let's get them out. Get them out of the way. Get that little bastard. Get a bit more. Bit closer. Now. Shoot it.
Warwickshire Police, how may I help you?
Hello? We're just driving south on the M40 motorway. We're just coming up to the Warwick service station. There's a motorcyclist laying flat out in the middle of the fast lane. Somebody needs to get here pretty bloody quickly.
At 2:23, a 999 call was made, and within minutes the emergency services were on the scene. The police were faced with a man dead on the tarmac, his friends frantically trying to save his life. His beloved Harley had continued riderless for 100 metres. And one of Britain's major motorways became a crime scene.
First of all, when you have a crime scene, what you're trying to do is to preserve the evidence. You don't want your forensic evidence disappearing off in the treads of tyres or on people's feet and so on. That's at any crime scene, and so the M40 posed some real particular challenges.
At 2:29, the paramedics arrived at the scene. They did what they could, but Gerry was pronounced dead at 2:47. The Warwickshire Police were now dealing with a major investigation.
It was suggested by a paramedic fairly soon into it that he thought maybe there was a possibility of the victim having been shot.
The M40 was now a murder scene and would remain closed while forensic teams pored over it with a fine-tooth comb.
We didn't know at that time from where he'd been shot. From a static point at the side of the motorway, from a vehicle travelling in north or southerly direction. We weren't sure about anything there, so we had to preserve everything.
The police desperately